Welcome to Wonder in the Word, where science, scripture, and daily life comes together to reveal the beauty of God's creation. I'm your host, Sarah, and this week we're digging into one of the coolest questions in the Bible. You've probably heard this before. In Genesis 1:3, God says, "Let there be light," and boom, light, day 1. But hold on, the sun, that doesn't show up until verse 16 on day 4. So what's actually happening here? What was that light on day 1? How can there be light without the sun? This fascinating detail in the Bible is easy to overlook, but today we're going to examine it closely, and the answer is both mind-blowing and heartwarming. Alright, so let's rewind. In Genesis 1:3, and God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Then by verse 5 we read, God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening and there was morning the first day. But it's not until verse 16 that we find a reference to the sun. God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, which is the sun, and the lesser light to rule the night, which is the moon. So the sun appears much later. I remember reading this and thinking, how does that work? Was God using some flashlight for the first few days? So what's actually going on here? Turns out that this is not a mistake or a contradiction, and the Bible is actually very intentional with the word sequence. So let's explore. We usually refer to light as the sun shining, right? But in original Hebrew, in Genesis 1:3, the word or, it's just light in a general sense. So that stands for brightness, illumination, energy. But in verse 16, when God makes the sun and the moon, the word changes. It's mi-orut, which means light sources. So day 1 was all about light itself. Day 4 was about giving that light a home, putting it in a sun, a moon, and the stars. Here's a science fun fact. Light is actually energy. In physics, light is made of photons, and photons don't need a sun to exist. They're just out there radiating energy. So scientifically, you really can have light without the sun. Crazy, right? If you've ever heard of the Big Bang Theory, it says that the universe started as a flash of pure energy, bright, intense light. No stars, no planets, just energy bursting out and expanding. Doesn't that kind of echo what Genesis says? God says, "Let there be light," and boom, the universe kicks off and it starts. I'm not saying that Genesis is a physics textbook, but it's kind of cool that both the science and the scripture both start with the story of light. A Jewish physicist even said that "let there be light" is the most accurate scientific statement in the Bible. Let's analyze this even deeper. What if that light on day 1 wasn't just energy, but God's presence? There's this beautiful verse in 1 John 1:5. God is light, and in him no darkness at all. And in Psalm 104, verse 2, it says, he wraps himself in a light as with a garment. So maybe Genesis 1:3 is God shining his own glory into the darkness, not from a sun, but just from himself. In Revelation 21, there's a vision of New Jerusalem, heaven, and it says, the city doesn't need the sun or moon because the glory of God gives it light. So from the very beginning to the very end, God himself is the source of light. And honestly, that just hits harder because it's not just about physics or science, it's about God stepping into the darkness with presence, with purpose, and with a power. Let me tell you a quick story. A little girl was once afraid of the dark, so her dad gave her a candle for when the power went out. One night, sure enough, the lights cut out. Total darkness. She lit the candle and smiled. "See, Daddy, I have the light." And he said, "You do, but remember, the light was always there. You just had to spark it." That's what Genesis 1:3 feels like. God sparking light into a dark world. But what spark? It came from who he is, not from a sun or star or the moon. I was thinking about how this shows up in real life too. Like, have you ever been in a season where things felt totally dark, confusing, heavy, unclear, hard, and then later, looking back, you realize, oh wow, God was actually working the whole time. He had a plan. Maybe you didn't see the light yet, but it was already there. Maybe not shining bright from a lamp or a spotlight, but still being there in a friend's hug or a moment of peace. Sometimes, like Genesis, the light comes before we even realize what's lighting us up. So why did God create light before the sun? Light isn't limited to the sun. It's energy, it's presence, it's his glory. God didn't need a sun to shine. He is light, and in our own lives, that same light is still showing up in unexpected ways. Before anything else existed, land, oceans, time, God turned on the light. And maybe He's still doing that in you. Thanks for joining me on Wonder in the Word. If today's episode sparked your curiosity or stirred your faith, share with a friend, and don't forget to follow the show so you never miss a moment of wonder. You can connect more on Instagram at Wonder in the Word and join the conversation using hashtag Wonder in the Word. Until next time, keep wondering, keep seeking, and remember, the light was always there, even before the sun.